Good morning. Welcome to this morning's webinar from EcoProd. I'm just going to give this a moment to make sure that our participants are joining correctly from the waiting room, and indeed to make sure that I have pressed all of the right buttons. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I can see we've got people joining. That's great. So our topic this morning is how to reduce water consumption in your business. So a few sort of kind of background housekeeping points before we launch into the content. Just so you know, we are recording the session today, and once we are finished, we will get this processed and it gets uploaded onto our website along with the slides. We'll get an email out to you probably first thing tomorrow morning, once everything's been processed, that gives you a link to the full video and all of the slides, and including the kind of Q&A session at the end. So you'll notice your lines and your cameras are all kind of turned off by default, so you can see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. But please do use the Q&A function. So if you wiggle your mouse in the bottom of the Zoom window, there's a Q&A button. There's also a chat button. You can use either of those to send us questions as you occur to them, as they occur to you as we're going along. We'll answer what we can in the background, but all of our panels stay on the line at the end, and we'll read those out and have a bit of a discussion, for you. We will cover your questions one way or another. If we can't answer them in this session, we'll come back to you separately. So you will have seen the agenda from your kind of invitation and your confirmations and so on, but just kind of to go over this again, we'll introduce us and our company, have a little bit of a discussion about why water saving is so important and what the likely sort of future impact of water shortages is likely to be. Then we'll talk about water management strategies and where to start with developing one, and then move into the kind of the 3 pillars of water saving that we kind of structure our business around. So ways to use less water, ways to waste less water, and then ways to reuse and recycle the water that you already have. And then we'll wrap up with kind of how we can help, and then move, as I said, into the kind of questions Q&A section. So you have got 4 of us on the call today. So my name is Rachel. I'm mostly in the background today, covering the questions, making sure it's all working correctly. But I'm on the business development team at EcoProd, where I've been for quite some time. I have 3 colleagues with me today. So I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So Marcus, I think you probably go next.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. And good morning to everyone that's joined us. I'm the owner and founder of EcoProd. Basically, it stands for Environmental Product Applications. The emphasis is obviously on water. My background is I'm an M&E engineer, building services engineer by trade and training, and we launched EcoProd as a solutions provider back in 2007. And I'm now going to hand over to Jacob to introduce himself, who I've known since that time as well. Jacob?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jacob Tompkins. My background is mainly in hydrology and hydrogeology as an academic, and then within the water industry. And yeah, as Marcus says, I've known him for a long time. My role within EcoProd is to look at sort of water systems, water strategy, that wider context. Oh, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Paul. I'm the sales director at EcoProd. My background is in manufacturing and specifications markets. So I've been around products for a long time, take a great interest in sustainability. And along with Marcus, we're at the front end of customer engagement on a daily basis. So that's me.
So just to give everyone that's joined us a bit of background as to EcoProd, there you can see the circular economy photographic that actually is the basis of our business. And you see in the inner circle there, you've got a number of manufacturing brands. These are global brands. Some of them we represent exclusively here in the UK and have done for many years. We do work with the manufacturers that we represent. We do quite a lot of R&D with them, new products, product development. There's a very good, strong engagement because many of them are obviously from European countries. And European countries are facing the same water strategy issues as we are here today in the UK. So there's a definite fit about everything we do here with them and their own operations across Europe. When we work with clients, it's purely on the sort of promise of a return on investment. We're a solutions providing company. We work across every sector here in the UK. We like to understand customer and clients' challenges and work with them to build a strategy around water conservation, which in turn also means energy reduction, which as well in turn obviously is a carbon reduction. On the screen there, you'll see a lot of brand names known to all of us. They are all clients of EcoProd. Some of them have been since we started back in 2007, some of them more recent. We do a lot of work with the dedicated FM companies here in the UK as well, and we obviously help them in every sector as well. So why is water saving important? Well, because it is. I mean, it's just to be blunt, it's an absolute must. It's not a choice anymore. If any of us ever thought it was a choice, that certainly is not true of today. You've got those figures there on the screen, reducing personnel use from 140 litres to 100 or even lower. We have water stress in just about every part of the UK right now. And also, just to emphasise that actually it's common sense as well, because water saving also means a reduction in your carbon footprint, but also means a reduction in your energy bills and so on and so forth. And the energy savings associated with water reduction in terms of heating, cooling, pumping, etc., is quite phenomenal. And all of this is going to the bottom line of every organisation. So we can't stress enough to all of those that have joined us today how important it is due to current water shortages and challenges that are only going to get worse, but also with a reduction across the board, you are going to save money. And I'm now just going to hand over to Jacob.
Thanks, Marcus. Okay, so everyone talks about sort of water resources and stress, and everyone thinks it rains a lot in the UK. Yes, it does, but the rainfall patterns are changing. So these are just some nice examples, scary examples from the past few years. So the brown is basically very, very low rainfall. So using 2023 as an example, what we saw in February 2023 was unbelievably dry conditions. So this was the driest year on record. So as you can see, most of the South and the Midlands, totally dry, totally arid, very, very small amounts of rainfall. And then what we saw in the next month was the wettest March 40 years. So again, the dark blue means huge amounts of water. So we saw completely arid conditions followed by flooding. Now, statistically, what you could have had was an arid time followed by another arid time followed by another arid time. So what we're seeing in the UK is the average amount of rainfall sort of remains the same, but we're seeing these extremes. And what climate change will mean is more droughts and more floods. And this will directly affect your business because it means that the water companies can't plan for water management in the same way they did. And Anglian Water, for instance, has said in the next 5-year plan, they budget for 5 years, there is no new water for any new developments. So if you're thinking about building a new business or expanding your business in Anglian's region, which is the largest in the UK, just think about where you're going to get the water from. Likewise, parts of North Sussex, you're not allowed to build any new houses unless you can offset the water. The same issue around Cambridge. And you might think this is just in the south. Every year, water has to be pumped up, taken by tanker to the north of Scotland to refill the reservoirs, because this eastern part of Scotland is seeing severe drought. Severe drought in Scotland are not two things you'd normally hear together. So you really need to think about this for your business. It's quite serious in terms of the way the climate is changing and the demands for water are increasing. Because if also you look at these maps, the areas with the driest bits are the areas with the highest population and the highest growth. Next slide, please. Okay, so because of this, in this context, you need a water management strategy. You've probably got an energy management strategy. You know what you do if the energy goes off, you know who to call, you've got backup generators, all that sort of stuff. What about water? Where's your backup water? Have you thought about what if you don't have any water, from a health and safety viewpoint, you have to shut the building because you can't flush the toilets, there's no hand washing, none of this sort of stuff. So you need to think about it in a strategic context. It might be cheap compared to everything else, but if you don't have it, you can't operate. So a water management strategy is sort of a helicopter overview of everything. Next slide, please. Okay, so why would you want to do a water management strategy? So regulatory compliance. So lots of people now being prosecuted for excess water use, for pollution, a whole load of things like that. It reduces costs, as Marcus talked about, reduces carbon. Water and carbon are linked. Water's very heavy, hard to pump, really difficult to heat. So it takes 8 times more to heat a cubic meter of energy, to heat a cubic meter of water than it does a cubic meter of concrete. Specific heat capacity of water is very, very high. Environmental benefits, the less water you use, the more water there is in the rivers. Benefiting your staff and customers. People like to work at a place they know is environmentally responsible. We're seeing a lot more of this from customers, seeing customer demands for proper environmental stewardship rising, and it guides decision making. So if you've done a strategy like an audit, like a financial audit, but for water, and if you looked at where the water's coming from, where you're using it, where it's going, when you then need to make decisions, you can make those within that context. So you're guiding it. You're not just saying, oh my God, we haven't got any water, let's do rainwater harvesting. What you're saying then is, we haven't got any water, this is our water strategy, this is the best place to spend money to get us more water. So the elements, as I've said, where does it come from? So are you using tap water? You're getting water from a borehole, you've got your own reservoir, you're using rainwater, what you're using it for. So which areas of business are you using water for? It might be water features, might be toilet use. It might be they're a car manufacturer and you're using a lot in the paint shop. Could be anyway. So look at where you're using it and where does it go? So have you got trade effluent? Is rainwater flowing off your site? Are you putting it back into sewer? And you're paying for all of these bits. So where does it cost? You pay for the water that comes in. You pay when you use it because you've got to pump it around, and then you pay when it leaves the site. So if you can say, hang on a minute, and this applies for anyone north of Birmingham, we've got a big car park and all that water's draining off, and we are paying a surface water drainage charge for that. If instead we put it into like a rain garden or something, or captured some of that and reused it, we'd be saving twice. So you need to do this management strategy, which is effectively a water audit, and think about why you're using water, where it's coming from, where it's going to. Next, please.
We're finding, Jacob, aren't we?
Sorry, Marcus, yeah.
We're just saying we're finding more and more clients getting charges for license breaches and permits being reduced and so on and so forth. And it's quickly caught them up.
And it's going to be harder and harder to get a license for boreholes. The Environment Agency are starting to clamp down on this, and by 2027 they'll start to claw back abstraction licenses. Next, right? So how do you do it? How do you develop it? Can you improve on what you've already got? You may already have one. How do you monitor and maintain a water strategy once it's in place? So do your water strategy. I mean, we can help you with this, but actually it's fairly simple to do in the first place. Get all your water bills together, find any records of boreholes and stuff, gather all the information. So before you get a consultant in, gather all the information. You can then use someone, we can do this, to do the consultancy part, but you've got a lot of the data yourself. And you've got to keep it as a live document and maybe review it once a year. And you also need to have it, who's responsible for it. Name a person within the business, and then how do you keep it live? Once a year, report it to the board. And I've always said that you've got to get water in the washroom and in the boardroom. So if you have it as a board discussion item once a year, might be there's nothing to discuss, but it's a big cost center, not as much as energy, but the risk associated with water is enormous and it's increasing all the time. And as Marcus says, it's cost, it's compliance, it's reputation, and it's physically being able to maintain your business. Next, please. Okay, so how do you track it? That's what we said. So you'll have a water supplier. They can potentially give you smart metering and online billing. You should be able to get your data onto a tablet or a computer so you can constantly watch what you're using. You can also have sub-meters. So let's say you've got a factory and you've got different areas. You can then sub-meter that. Having that data enables you to look at areas in the business where you're using the most water and track it on a month-by-month basis. And it also enables you to look, if you've got different sites, to benchmark between those sites and measure before and after any changes you make. So if you're going to implement some water saving changes, you want to be able to measure that. So take some readings beforehand, take some readings afterwards. Also helps you identify leaks. So if suddenly you say, hang on a minute, why are we using so much water at night? That nighttime run might be because you've got leaks. So getting that data is useful. And if you can't do it yourself, then talk to your water retailer or come and talk to us or, you know, other people that do water.
That's quite common actually, isn't it?
Sorry, Mark.
Your comment about leakage at night time, that is quite common because water pressures increase during the nighttime periods.
Yeah, because less people are using it. Yeah. Nighttime flow is big, and quite often with a leak, you won't see a big pool of water. It could be a leak under a floor, could be a hidden small leak, could be a tap that's just running. And then ask suppliers whether they can help you. So you've got a water supplier, they have targets for water efficiency as well. So ask them and they can help. And so can we. Next, please. Okay. That's water strategy done.
Thanks, Jacob. Apologies if the dog's barking in the background is disturbing people. Apologies, my next door neighbour's dog going nuts. So apologies for that. Simple things. When we go to visit clients, we can look at the bigger issues that Jacob's alluded to as a holistic view, but there's some really simple, quick wins that we can also identify looking in your washrooms, starting with your aisles and toilets. On the side, it mentions there that saving up to 100,000 litres of water. Well, that's actually an average. We have many sites where water savings from our measured consultation views that when we attend is significantly higher, but as you can see, the financial savings on urinals are quite significant, giving you a really quick payback if you were to replace them with waterless urinals, which I will confirm, if installed correctly and cleaned with this specified product, will provide a no odor and a cleaner waste system, so you avoid blockages. So waterless urinals are a really good way of transferring a good water saving carbon reduction quite quickly. Toilets, another thing. The thing with toilets we see quite often is that a lot of customers have converted to dual flush toilets. What we find when we measure and look at these when we're attending sites is that these are not always set up correctly or installed correctly. So in effect, you may have a dual flush button system, which is actually providing the same flush level throughout. So again, that's something that maybe you could encourage your engineering team to take a look at to see if there's some improvements made. Also question whether a single flush may be a better option. Is dual flush sometimes confusing for the users? They press the small flush, they're not happy with the flush, they press the large flush, so in effect they're using more water. Would a single flush actually be a better solution for clearing the soil pipe? Because water savings on toilets is important, but clearing the soil pipe is also a massive consideration. And it's something that we constantly look at with clients just to make sure that the best practice, best advice, best guidance for your building is always provided.
Also, just comment that drainage systems need what they call a self-cleaning velocity.
Absolutely, yes. So, and again, every site will be different depending on the age of the building, the way the soil pipes are connected, back-to-back bathrooms, combining in drain systems. So the velocity of the water is really important. So whether you've got single flush, dual flush, or even a direct flush where you don't actually have a cistern, all of these things are available now. It's just matching the right solution for the right reason. And make maintenance, regular maintenance on your toilets. Are any of your toilets actually leaking? There's products available now which we can install on pipework supplying cisterns to see if there's a trend of water falling down the back of the actual white goods, which you might not be able to recognize with the human eye. Obviously, you could put toilet paper down there on the back and just see if there's anything changed that when the toilet's not in use. But there are products that we can help with that. And WaterWise talks about the amount of toilets that are leaking in the UK, between 8 and 13% of all toilets currently leaking. So there's a lot we can do without spending lots of money, without buying new products. But again, we can help with all of those things. Taps. I am stunned and surprised today that so many organizations that I visit are still using manual taps, whether that's screw head, lever, or non-concussive. Surely a sensor tap is a better solution these days. Sensor technology has been with us for over 70 years now, and the technical advancements over the 70 years are really considerable, where you can actually have full control on your water usage, only drawing water when the tap is activated, low flows. A typical manual tap will flow between 6 and 8 litres per minute. Our sensor taps that we bring to the market start at a flow rate of 1.9. So you can see straight away it's about an 80% saving on a low flow tap. And of course, you've got power options. Sensor taps can be mains run, they can be battery run, and the batteries are on the high street batteries for these products. So they're not an expensive consumable, and they'll be expected to last a considerable time. Each product slightly different, and we can be more specific with customers on inquiry levels to give them that data. There's also green options on water saving taps. So we could look at taps that have turbines built in. So as the water flows through the tap, it turns the turbine, creates its own power, and backs up the battery that you've got installed. And there's also a similar option in solar as well. So sensor taps are definitely a way forward for reducing water, reducing carbon, and of course, the impact on heating as well. So heating less hot water. The final thing to say on water saving taps is, depending on your environment, could there be a consideration to have what we call an atomized tap? So we have the Conti Plus Max atomized tap, which can be supplied as either a single flow, cold or heated, of a thermostat, or a dual supply, where it can actually have hot and cold water, where you've got flow rates going from 0.25 litres per minute up to 0.5 litres a minute. And it comes out in a really fine spray pattern. So you could, in effect, put a tap in on a cold supply that uses no hot water whatsoever, but the fine particles of water through the technical application of this product will not allow you to recognize that that water is cold. Depending on your user, if it's just a simple hand wash, it will be perfect. If you're in a more commercial environment or an industrial environment, you might want to consider a higher flow. It might not be suitable for all applications, but we always surprise customers when we present this product. Thanks, Rachel. Go to the next slide. Very similar to the taps, the shower technology these days that's available, it says on there up to 60% savings. That's easy to achieve. Switching fixed heads, switching shower heads and shower handsets can save consumers quite a lot of water. In my own environment, I had a shower last year which I changed over, and it was at 12 litres per minute. I simply changed the shower head over. That has some great technology inside it, and I'm now showering at 5.7 litres per minute, and I genuinely believe I'm getting a better shower experience now than I was previously with the way the water pattern is actually delivered. So again, some really quick, simple wins. So whether you're in the hotel industry, leisure industry, office industry, healthcare, care, something like that could be a game changer just by changing a simple, affordable product. Really, really easy. Kitchens are a little bit more challenging because everybody wants to have more water in the flush of a tap in a kitchen to create soap suds. But again, my experience is Marcus' experience when we're going to sites to see people is that quite often we see people washing up with no plug, no bowl, and just running taps. On one site we went to recently, we had taps that were running like that, being washed up at 25 litres a minute, and the person washing up was there for 10 minutes with the tap continuously running. So 250 litres of water to do 10 minutes of washing. Whereas if they were to fill a bowl up, it would be 8 litres of water. If they were to fill a sink up, typically about 12 litres of water. So is running a tap to actually do your washing up, is that good practice? We think not. Building regulations now stipulate that a good flow for kitchen taps is around 8 litres. That will create your soap suds. And there are products both on the sensor side and the manual side that we have available for those types of applications. So it's just making sure you understand what it is you need for the application in the environment that you're in. Obviously, there's things that, like all things, it's looking at low-use dishwashers, looking for the best environmental dishwasher on the market, the best that uses less water, less energy, and also washing machines. So we work closely with Xeris Technology, where the washing machines will save pretty much 70% on water, 50% on energy, and 50% on detergent reductions. So quite significant improvements for the environment. So across the kitchen, there's a number of things that you can consider, but effectively just think about what you've got, think about how you use it, who's using it, and perhaps we can then start to consider some behavior changes. And I'm going to move on to Marcus on the next slide.
So yeah, thank you, Paul, for that overview. We think behavior change is very significant in any organisation. If you're going to meet the demands in the kitchen environment that Paul's just been going through, it will require behavior change, because we are creatures of habit by nature. And, well, I've always done it this way, so that's it. No. What you need is to create a culture of water saving within your organisation. As Jacob said at the beginning about making somebody responsible for your water management strategy, make somebody responsible for an awareness campaign. Get this communication sort of permeated through your organisation, through your business, and then put up signs, talk about what you're doing. And you'll find, we've proved this with working with clients and prospects, we find that they do get buy-in from staff, they do get positive comments from visitors and the like. And also, what you'll find is if your staff are doing this in your organisation, they then take that home to their own domestic environment, which then creates a better environment in their own domestic operation, which in turn then gets permeated through their own friends and families. And it becomes a complete behaviour change. And at the end of the day, these few changes can be a significant cost saving, a significant reduction of all your bills. So again, it comes back to what we said at the beginning. It's common sense, and these savings fall directly to the bottom line in your organisation. I'll now hand back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Marcus. Changing behaviour is an important one. Education. We've got one customer at the moment where we're working very closely with, where they've introduced a new flushing toilet system. And to make sure the flushing toilet system, which is a sensor controlled, is understood properly, they've created some labels to install to educate people to understand why they've made this change for water saving practice, and also to help users of both visitors and staff recognise and understand these, to take away confusion. People get confused when there's a change. Many people don't like change, so you need to help them down that journey. Newsletters and surveys are really important if you're a larger business, where you can actually give the intent of why a business is looking to change for environmental reasons, and simple posters. I'm sure we all remember going to hotels, and when you're looking at the effect of using detergents to wash towels, and the hotels questioning, do you need to have fresh towels, or can you be considerate of the world environment? Those sort of impact posters, impact labels are quite informative, and they actually make a difference. We talked earlier on about leaking toilets. WaterWise's view on this is that toilets can leak up to 400 litres per day, which is quite a significant cost saving on your environment when you actually look at how many toilets you've got in a large organisation. If something like a football stadium where there are multiple levels of toilet areas, if each toilet is leaking, That's a considerable amount of money each year. So it really, really can be quite impactful. And there are products that can actually help with this behavior change. The Guardio leak sensor, for instance, which also doubles as a temperature measure as well, which was a significant improvement on getting data around people's businesses. And if you've got data that says this is a leaking area, this is a temperature that is below or above or in line with your own expectations, the more information we can gather, the more information we can monitor and share, clients can make informed decisions, because there's so many unknowns with waters, because no one's really taken the time to actually really get involved. And also a product called Shower Sense, which is something that might be really useful for residential care homes and also hotel groups, large organizations, large businesses that actually have multiple ensuite areas where they have no data of usage of their customers coming into that building, and really don't understand whether someone is actually staying in that hotel room and showering once, twice, 3 times a day, or whether they're showering for 1 or 2 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes. And that can actually help them by installing a small unit in there, which is inconspicuous and doesn't, it just records the water flow when water flow is turned on, sends that to the hub, and you could look at maybe 50 or 100 rooms in your hotel over a period of time, and you could actually say, right, that's how much this water is being used. Can we actually make some changes? Do we change the style of product? Do we change the technology in the shower heads so that people can still shower for that same length of time, but actually use a far decreased amount of water without them actually recognizing that's been changed? Because we don't want to upset our customers. We want to give customers a good experience. And it's just about gathering data again. And of course, if you've got real-time data about your shower usage in your business, it's amazing how, if you inform people about what you're trying to do to understand that when you've got that data, that people will actually start to shower for shorter periods. Again, we have a brilliant little shower which we supply into the market, which is an electronic time flow tap. It has a limit of 3 minutes, which in, say, for instance, a commercial leisure center is absolutely perfect. You can change that to a lower time, but people get frustrated if you push a button on the shower and after just a few seconds it turns off. If you give them a decent amount of time to be able to shower, if they finish early, they can press the button to stop, or they can, if it finishes after 3 minutes, they can press it again. But it's an educational tool. So changing behavior, engaging with people, and monitoring that information and using that information to make changes in your business is something that's very powerful.
And just to mention, Paul, that you and I often speak about preventative plan maintenance, PPM being a must.
Yeah, it doesn't always get done, does it, Marcus?
Doesn't always get done, but we've proved clients that have kept to a stringent sort of regime of PPM. Basically, you get lower costs in the long run. It's not reactive maintenance you're carrying out. Products last longer, so that's all got a benefit long term.
Yeah, and just to say, PPM on taps and showers and toilet controls is not a big time-consuming element. It could be something like cleaning a flow control, as simple as that. Checking any filters that you might have in your supply once or twice a year, just to try and eradicate scale. We know scale is a big issue in buildings these days. We've actually got a product that can eradicate scale from a building environment, which we've not mentioned in this presentation today. But again, it's something we can pick up with people. If they've got scale in their buildings, drop us a line and we'll help you through that conversation as well. Right. Do you want this one, Marcus, or do you want me to take this one?
You carry on, Paul. I'll join in with some bits and pieces.
Fantastic. So there are products out there now where we can look at the escape of water and water management to give a complete holistic view and control and remote access to managing water in your business. I think when we talk about the Conti CNX system, the best example I've got of this is a secondary school down in Bristol, which has got 4 CNX systems linked together. And over the last 4 or 5 years, there's probably something like 600 products of taps and showers installed across the school, and each one has been commissioned to actually allow for the hot water system to be able to control things like hygiene flushes and thermal flushes in controlled timelines when the school is closed for thermal flushings, to make sure that the water system is in good order, taking into account how good the hot water system is to be able to create heating sources of 55, 60 degrees and above in different parts of the building. So installing a system that can control and maintain your flush regime without having to do that manually, give a complete data log on the temperature outputs when things have happened, so you can actually support it as part of your HSE, is something really, really good. And
it's a good point there, Paul, to point out that those systems, after the schools opened up after the pandemic, they didn't have to be touched at all, did they?
No, you beat me to it. I was just going to say that, Marcus. So the engineer responsible for that school was located in his home about 40 miles away, but he had remote access that he could log in and make sure that everything was doing exactly what it needed to be. And there was no remedial works required after the COVID lockdown was lifted. And the school opened the same time they were able to, without any delays whatsoever, which was absolutely brilliant. Unlike a lot of other buildings and businesses that had to investigate and had Legionella issues. So a water management system can really give you full control on a water system to eradicate pathogens and bacteria, but it's all part of a package of monitoring and drawing things together. And there are simpler products as well. We have apps that can connect and talk to phones to get local reports or change the parameters of a setup. You might want to look at individual hygiene controls for certain points in your buildings where you've got higher risk, where taps aren't used so often. Say, I want to flush that every 12 hours if it's not used for maybe a few minutes, taking into account the water path leading to the tap and how long that may be. But again, there are a lot of products now. We're working with another client in London where they've had over £1 million worth of insurance claims in the last 12 months through flood from one apartment to another. And we've now got a trial going on there where we've installed the sensor units on the pipework, which maintains and monitors the water flow. And if the water flow increases at different times of the day, alerts and messages can be sent and shared with the site team, where they can go and investigate and react. And likewise, similar systems, which we call flood protection. So a slight difference on term, but in effect the same way, where it's monitoring water through a given area. And what it was able to do is, if it recognized a change of pattern through the algorithm that it learns once it's been installed, it can actually do one of two things. During working hours, it could message the individual engineers to let them know there's a problem, or if we've given the right permissions, it can automatically shut down that zone of water, whether that be a whole building or a part of a building. So there's an awful lot of products around to give you much better control, to help your HSE and your water audits and your tasks and your reporting, but also to prevent damage from floods, etc., and to make sure regimes are set up correctly, all of which need to be considered on a bespoke basis, which is what we do every single day. But these products are available.
So I'll just pick up on this one, Paul. So the third pillar is about water reuse. Now, there's lots of systems out there. There's lots of things that can be done. But one thing we would stress is that they're not fit and forget. Ponds, swales, rain gardens, etc. I mean, there's some very impressive systems that can be put in place, but a lot of people install them, and then because they don't have a PPM regime in place, they get forgotten. It's almost like a fit and forget sort of attitude that falls through the system by default. So when we talk about reuse, we look at rainwater harvesting as do it simply, because as soon as you start to want to use rainwater internally in a building, you've got a lot of compliance you've got to put in place. separate water systems and so on and so forth. And what we say is, if you want to look at reuse in terms of rainwater, sit down and work out what you're going to use that water for first. Well, we've had clients come to us saying they want to put a rainwater harvesting scheme in, and then we say to them, well, what are you going to use it for? And they say, don't know. And so you need to go through this process of actually analysing what you're going to use that water for. And again, grey water recycling. These systems are all available. We have partners and so on and so forth that provide these services, but they're not easy to install when it comes to a retrofit situation. There's lots of considerations to be taken on board when you're putting them into an existing building. This all can be done, but again, you need to go through the process of totally analysing what you're going to do, use the water for, what your existing building infrastructure is, and therefore work out what the commercials are going to be for that installation to be installed, work out what the likely return on investment is going to be.
Can I just jump in there, Marcus,
Yes,
as well? With clients, we try and help them think things through from a water reuse, because sometimes it's not always obvious, but it can be things like last year we had a client where the terms of the FM provider changed, where they weren't allowed to use fresh potable water for window washings on an estate which had vast buildings which were mainly glass. So they had to look at rainwater harvesting for collecting and using that as the application to give them a solution. But it could be for vehicle washdown. It could be for street washdown in your building environments, external. It could be for landscaping, for watering. There's all sorts of use. But just to have a quick think about that. And do you have a window cleaner that comes into your business that just connects his hose onto your outside tap? Or would it be better to have him connecting onto a harvested water and using that instead, reducing your costs because you're effectively paying him to wash your windows and giving him the product to do it as well? So there's a number of things that you really need to consider for a reuse purpose.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you, Paul. Now I'll hand over to you, Rachel.
Still on mute. That's not going to help, is it? So thank you very much. A few other resources for you. When you get the slides through, these are live links, but these are a few kind of publications, white papers that we've produced. The Green Washroom Guide, a guide to saving water in your business, and one that has a sort of financial twist, a guide to saving water for finance departments. We find that often the sustainability team, the facilities team, or the estates team that we're working with need to work with the finance team. So we produced this document to help people in that situation. Right, some questions. Okay, Michael asks, this came in at the beginning when we were looking at the rainfall maps and so on. So what are the water companies doing to deal with this change? This is now becoming the norm, yet I don't hear any news about infrastructure change to deal with the change in climate and how we collect and distribute water.
It's a very good question. We'd like to ask the same. In fact, we are asking the same, aren't we, Paul? We're actually working with a number of water wholesalers, so water companies directly. Anglian, Southern East Surrey, Southwest Severn Trent, to name a few. They do have challenges. I think we need to remember as well that they all have targets that are not of their own making. They are all driven by Ofwat, which, as we know, is an office department of DEFRA. So it's directly governmental in its drive. Now, I think there is a big disconnect between water wholesalers and water retailers. If Jacob was still on the call, he could give us more detail about that. But to answer the question is, water wholesalers do have serious challenges. And I think we've all got to do our bit. I mean, it's no good us sitting here saying that I have a right to water and therefore I can do what I like. You can't. I can't. No one can. Those days are over, even if they existed previously. So I think it has to be a joined up approach, Rachel, to answer that question specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just add something there, Marcus?
Yeah, go on, Paul.
I think working closely with Southern Water over the last couple of years, we've been made aware that they've made plans to have new reservoirs built, which when they get to planning consent in local council districts, they've been refused consent because land is premium and possibly other developments take a priority. Well, unless that change at government level, we're never going to really solve the issue of storing more water and collecting more water, which again is why Ofwat introduced some funding for the water companies, which is what we've been working with the various providers we work with to try and look at efficiencies in buildings. If infrastructure can't change, but if we help individual businesses, whether that's universities, sports stadia, hotels, commercial businesses, holiday parks, a real variation of different types of industry, if we can actually make a difference on the demand of fresh potable water one by one, that can actually make an impactful difference. And that's the way that we are trying to approach our business with all of our customers. And believe it or not, we can save millions of litres of waters for most of our customers just through that consideration.
Yeah, I agree.
Michael's follows up that developments take priority, yet no new developments are allowed. Water supply seems like a catch-22 situation.
Probably right.
Which is all the more reason to be at the kind of business and personal level to be using less, wasting less, etc.
Yeah, and I'm with Michael in a few weeks' time. So, Michael, we can pick up a proper conversation together, one-to-one, and hopefully identify how we can help each other and make those improvements, and then shout to the world about it. Because if we do it with you, we can do it with others.
Earlier on, when you were talking about urinals, you talked about a specified cleaner. What is that cleaner, and can it be used when you have a septic tank?
Marcus?
Yes, it's microbiological, it's pH neutral, and yes, it can be used with septic tank. In fact, we've got lots of customers here in the UK that are in remote locations which have that product installed, and in those situations, they've even got water treatments actually going back to the natural water course. It actually augments the operation.
And can I also just add to that point as well, that the active cleaner we use for our urinals is no easier or harder than any other cleaning product for a urinal. Although we have had a client recently say to us that actually cleaning the polycarbonate versions of our waterless urinals is far better than the ceramic versions they had before, which had nooks and crannies actually in some of the water supply lines that came into it, whereas ours is a smooth solution. So it's easier. So again, we've got further details we can send to anybody that may be interested.
Do you have numbers for how water relates to carbon savings?
Yeah, typically, this is a UK average. If you are in a more rural location, we can be more refined and give you specific information. But water landing in the reservoir, being pumped through filtration systems, pumped to your businesses, has the equivalent of 0.4 grams of carbon per litre of water as an average. So again, if we do a water audit for you and identify savings, say for instance, on the urinal side of things, well, not only can we give you the water savings annually that you will achieve by changing, we can actually give you a carbon number as well to relate to that as part of your business case.
Okay, thank you. I've got one more. So if anybody else has any more questions, please pop them in the chat or the Q&A now. Are there grants available for these solutions?
Yes, there are. Now, a lot of this is coming through the water wholesalers from Ofwat. It's quite specific, Paul, isn't it? Depending on what region of the UK you're in.
Absolutely. We've recently completed 3 projects in the South Coast area of the United Kingdom, and we've been fortunate enough through the audit documentation we provided where we've attended sites, we've measured the water they're currently using, we've analysed the water bills for that particular client or clients in this case, and we've done a submission which we've completed on behalf of the client through one of our water partners. And we sent that through where they've been given funding. They will audit that report and then they will confirm after a period of time whether that actually is going to be a beneficiary of any grant systems. And typically some of these grants have been up to 50%. The most important thing a client must recognize that if he wants us to do an application for a grant, they must be also willing to put their hand in their own pocket and almost come up with a like for like amount of money, whatever that may be. And it doesn't have to be thousands of pounds, it could be hundreds of pounds. But if we cost out a project and we submit that to a water company for grants and they come back and say yes, then obviously we can actually help with some of that funding.
Yeah, it has to be match funded. And also, if a water wholesaler at the moment isn't actually operating a grant scheme, we can go to that water wholesaler and ask them if they're prepared to open up a conversation for a particular client.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't think anything else has come in. I'm sorry, I just have to check my private chat. Yeah, no, nothing else has come in. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending. As I said at the beginning, we will get this whole thing processed and an email out to you as soon as we can. So you've got the full recording and the slides and this Q&A available to you to watch back. You are welcome to watch that back, share it with colleagues, pass it on to other people. That's all absolutely fine. Thank you very much, Marcus and Paul, for your contribution, your presentation. And we hope to see some of you on a session sometime soon.
Thanks, Rachel. Cheers.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye-bye.